Welcome back to Firepower. In November, a single court ruling quietly rewired how gun laws are enforced across the United States. There were no flashing headlines on cable news, no emergency sessions in Congress. But beneath the surface, the rules that gun owners live by shifted in ways that matter immediately. If you own a firearm, carry one for self-defense, or work anywhere near the firearms industry, what you thought was settled law may no longer apply the way you expect. Today's video is not about panic, it's about clarity. We're going to walk through what changed after the November court ruling, why it matters right now, and how these changes affect everyday gun owners. This isn't legal advice. It's a plain English breakdown of what the courts actually did and what responsible owners need to understand moving forward. Let's start with the big picture. The November ruling didn't create brand new gun rights out of thin air. Instead, it changed how courts evaluate gun laws that already exist. For years, governments relied on broad claims of public safety to justify restrictions. That approach no longer works the same way. Courts are now demanding tighter logic, clearer limits, and real historical justification before allowing restrictions to stand. That shift triggered a cascade of consequences. The first major change is the standard courts now apply when judging gun laws. The ruling reinforced that strict constitutional scrutiny is no longer optional. When a law limits Second Amendment rights, the government must now meet the highest burden of proof. It must show a compelling interest, prove the restriction is narrowly tailored, and demonstrate that no less restrictive option would work. In practical terms, this makes it far harder for vague or overly broad gun laws to survive legal challenges. Laws written with loose language or sweeping bans are now under real pressure. That alone affects everything from magazine limits to carry restrictions. The second change involves civil liability after lawful self-defense. Under the new legal interpretation, individuals who lawfully defend themselves with a firearm are far more protected from follow-up civil lawsuits. In the past, even when a shooting was ruled legally justified, attackers or their families could still file civil claims. That threat hasn't vanished entirely, but the burden has shifted. Courts are now far less willing to allow civil cases to proceed when self-defense has already been established as lawful. For gun owners, this reduces one of the most chilling effects of self-defense law: the fear of financial ruin after doing everything right. The third change directly affects law enforcement accountability. The ruling narrowed the protection officers receive when they violate clearly established gun rights. If firearms are seized without probable cause, or if lawful carry is interfered with improperly, officers and agencies may face greater exposure to lawsuits. This doesn't remove legitimate law enforcement authority. It reinforces that authority must operate within constitutional boundaries. The message is simple: rights that exist on paper must exist in practice. Next is the issue of so-called sensitive places. For years, states expanded sensitive place designations to cover large portions of public life. Parks, transit systems, entire city blocks, and broad categories of private property were often labeled gun-free zones. The November ruling sharply narrowed that approach. Courts now require specific, historically grounded reasons for declaring an area sensitive. This means blanket bans are increasingly vulnerable. States must justify each restricted location individually rather than relying on sweeping declarations. For concealed carry holders, this brings much-needed clarity to where carry is actually prohibited. Another important change involves permitting delays. The court made it clear that government agencies cannot delay carry permits indefinitely. Time limits matter. When an applicant meets the requirements, agencies must issue or deny permits within a defined period. Failure to act may now be treated as a violation of rights rather than a neutral administrative delay. This directly addresses one of the most common complaints from gun owners: permit systems that function as de facto bans through endless waiting. The ruling also struck at certain storage and access laws. Some jurisdictions required firearms and ammunition to be stored separately or rendered inoperable at all times, even when the firearm was kept for self-defense. Courts now view these requirements far more skeptically. If a law makes effective self-defense impossible, it is unlikely to survive constitutional review. This doesn't eliminate safe storage responsibilities. It reinforces that safety rules cannot nullify the right they claim to regulate. One of the quieter but more significant changes involves firearm registration systems. The ruling reaffirmed that broad firearm registries tied directly to individual owners raise serious constitutional concerns. In several cases, courts have ordered states to halt registry expansion or delete improperly maintained records. The reasoning is straightforward. Registration systems that chill lawful ownership or enable abuse conflict with constitutional protections. For gun owners, this reduces the risk of future retroactive enforcement based on registry data. Another area affected is the regulation of licensed firearm dealers. The court emphasized that minor paperwork errors cannot automatically justify license revocation. Federal and state agencies must now distinguish between technical mistakes and actual criminal conduct. This protects small dealers from being shut down over harmless administrative issues and stabilizes the supply chain for lawful firearms. When lawful businesses are protected, lawful ownership becomes more accessible and transparent. The ruling also influenced interstate carry recognition. While it did not create nationwide permitless carry, it reinforced the principle that states cannot arbitrarily ignore each other's permits without strong justification. Several states are now revisiting reciprocity policies, and courts are signaling that recognition must be grounded in objective standards, not political preference. For travelers, this reduces the risk of unknowingly violating carry laws when crossing state lines. Finally, the ruling strengthened home defense protections. Castle Doctrine principles receive renewed judicial support. When individuals defend themselves inside their homes, prosecutors now face a higher burden to challenge claims of lawful self-defense. This does not authorize reckless behavior. It reinforces that the home remains the strongest zone of constitutional protection. Taken together, these changes reshape how gun laws function day to day. But it's important to understand what this ruling did not do. It did not erase all gun laws. It did not legalize everything everywhere. It did not eliminate the need to understand your state's specific regulations. Many laws remain in force while litigation continues. Confusion often arises when people assume court rulings apply instantly nationwide. Most changes occur gradually, through enforcement decisions and follow-up cases. That's why awareness matters. Gun owners who assume nothing has changed may miss new protections. Gun owners who assume everything has changed may accidentally break existing laws. The correct approach is informed caution. So what should responsible gun owners do now? First, stay updated using reliable sources, not social media rumors. Court rulings are nuanced, and headlines often exaggerate. Second, understand that rights are strengthened through correct use, not reckless behavior. Courts notice patterns. Third, if you carry or store firearms, review your state's guidance in light of recent decisions because enforcement policies often change before statutes do. This moment represents a shift in how the Second Amendment is treated, not a finish line. Courts are demanding discipline from lawmakers, clarity from agencies, and responsibility from citizens. And that's the key takeaway. Rights that survive scrutiny become stronger. Rights abused or misunderstood become vulnerable. The November ruling didn't hand gun owners unchecked freedom. It restored balance. It reminded governments that constitutional rights cannot be regulated out of existence. It reminded courts that tradition and text matter. And it reminded gun owners that knowledge is just as important as equipment. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. Understanding these changes helps you avoid mistakes, protect your rights, and engage in informed discussion rather than reactionary debate. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these changes surprised you the most? Do you think courts are finally bringing consistency back to gun law enforcement, or do you expect more pushback from states? Share your thoughts in the comments. Respectful discussion helps everyone understand what's really happening. If you value clear explanations without panic or hype, make sure you're subscribed to Firepower. We focus on what changed, why it matters, and how to navigate it responsibly. Stay informed, stay lawful, and we'll see you in the next one.